The most important question we must ask ourselves is, are we being good ancestors? That was spoken by Jonas Salk, who developed the polio vaccine in 1953. And what you may not know is that he chose not to patent the vaccine so that it would be available then and for generations to come at an affordable price. Roman Kershner tells that story at the beginning of his book, The Good Ancestor, a radical prescription for long-term thinking. He reminds us that we are inheritors of gifts from the past. He asks us to consider the legacy left by our ancestors, those who sowed the first seeds in Mesopotamia 10,000 years ago, those who cleared the land, who built the waterways and founded the cities where we now live, who made the scientific discoveries, who won the political struggles, and created the great works of art that have been passed down to us. Our faith tradition throughout the scriptures invites us to choose life so that we and our descendants might live. And the people of the Iroquois nation have something called the seventh generation principle. It's a philosophy that they follow, that the decisions made today should make a sustainable world 7 generations down the road. Not 1, not 2, but thinking about the 7th generation. Can you imagine our world today, our society, if we would have made decisions about land use and fishing and farming even 3 generations ago? Would we have had a dust bowl? Would we have overfished our waters? Would we have cut down so much old forest? Would we have paved over fertile farmland and built mansions and condos on that land? Would we have polluted our water and soil for the sake of energy for our cars and for the conveniences we enjoy in our homes? Climate change is here, and we know that, and it's only going to get worse. We are faced every day with issues related to the climate. And you and I know those statistics, and we have experienced increasing results of our actions in recent years. Tornadoes in Annapolis and in New Jersey, 500-year floods every 10 years. And how much of our news is consumed these days with weather-related disasters? If you listen to young people around the world, like our own young people, and Greta Thunberg from Sweden, and those who stand on street corners all around the world, including in front of our own city hall, these young people are asking us, they call us the grown-ups, and sometimes I wonder if that's the right word, but they are calling us as grown-ups to listen to their fears and anxieties about the world they are inheriting. These young people are calling us and the world, calling our attention to these environmental injustices that are affecting them as young people and the poor, first, hardest, and longest. And the question is, are you listening? And as Greta said to the United Nations, who's in charge here? Well, who's in charge? We are. We are the ones that are responsible for our own actions. We are the ones that can change our lifestyles and make choices that, compounded one with another, can make a huge difference. Do I need to remind us of the miracles that we saw last spring when the dolphins returned to the waters of Venice because they weren't filled with tourists? Or how blue the skies were in cities like LA because people weren't driving so much? Or the fact that you could see the Himalayas for the first time in years without the smog that came from the industries? We just have to think about that. That was a change. That was a change that we could see and feel and know just in a few months. It may not seem like much to not use a plastic bag, or as Angela was saying, to refill those bottles instead of using a fresh plastic bottle all the time, or to make one less car trip when we could go by bike or car. But think about it. Those compounded by thousands and thousands of people make a difference. And I'll never forget a youth retreat where we were looking at these issues of the environment, and I found out that it takes 25 gallons of water to make one t-shirt. At which point, one of the kids said, "Why are we getting t-shirts at every youth event we go to? How many t-shirts do we need?" And you don't even want to know how many gallons it takes to make a pair of jeans. But it's not all about less. It's about things we can do more of. We can plant more vegetables in our backyards. Linda and members of the Green Team will tell you, we don't have to mow lawns anymore. We can plant our yards with pollinator plants, native plants that will use less water and help us to restore the environment. We can plant trees. And we can contact our elected officials to help put into place legislation, laws that will hold us and companies accountable for what we are doing to the environment. Do you want to be a good ancestor? One of my sons reminds me of this all the time. Yo, boomer, look what you've done to the world. We're not just talking about climate change. The language we're using is creation justice. As people of faith, what we do to the environment is a justice issue because it does affect the most marginalized and poor among us, and the youngest and the oldest. Just think about what happens during a storm or when we lose electricity and nursing homes are forced to find ways to keep their residents cool. Just think about what happens when you have to evacuate thousands of people during the time of flood. Think about those countries in the southern hemisphere, in the global south, where the climate consequences of drought, floods, famine, and storms are already causing pain, and it is only getting worse. We know that lower income folks lie on cheaper land, which is often more vulnerable to these climate issues such as flooding and drought. Lower income communities do not have the same resources to rebuild. And every time we take over farmland and move the source of food further away from the people, we are hurting the people who do not have access to fresh food for a healthy life. And then you add to that wealthier countries like ours are responsible for most of the global climate's high levels of greenhouse gas pollution. And what we do affects millions and millions of people around the world. Are we being good citizens of the world today? And are we being good ancestors? And are we being followers of God? Followers of God's love for us? What are our acts of love that we can do today to make a difference in the world? Rabbi Nina Beth Cardin spoke earlier this morning during our Let's Talk situation. She does remind us that this is a faith issue, that this is a justice issue. She's the co-founder of the Maryland Campaign for Environmental Human Rights. And what this group is trying to do is to get every state legislature to have a law, to have laws that secure as a constitutional protection, as an unalienable right, that every citizen ought to have pure water, clean air, a stable climate, and a healthy environment in which to live. Every single citizen, not only of our country, but around the world. We gather on this day in gratitude for the gift of life that comes from our Creator. And in fact, this gift of life and the earth, this miracle, was the first act of love from God, our Creator. It was God's first act of love to us, to give us a place to live, a place that will sustain life, not only for us, but for those who are coming after us. We are united with the rivers and the lakes and the streams and the creeping things and those animals that fly in the air. As Kim read in the book, we belong to each other. We can't separate ourselves from the planet or the environment. And we as a church claimed this in May when we adopted our creation justice resolution. And some of the language in that resolution reminds us that we do this today and for those after us. Here's some of that language that we adopted. That we, the members of this congregation, realize that God has given us an amazing planet on which to live. And this planet is shared by the rest of humanity and will be shared with future generations as well. And as such, it is our responsibility to care for this precious gift and to keep it healthy for those who will come after us. We claimed our responsibility to be good ancestors. When we care for the creation, for the planet, for all that God has given to us, we are thinking not only about ourselves, but those who come after us. And by caring, we are caring for our children. We're being good ancestors. And we're thinking about not just the 7th generation, but the 10th and the 15th and the 20th. Thanks be to God. Amen.